Lord Stanley has made its way back to South Florida, but it was more than that created so much momentum for the growth of the game in South Florida.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, August 26th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at @LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix and 3 times a week during the off season. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again to celebrate the Summer of Champions for the Florida Panthers here on the show. But even though the Stanley Cup is back in South Florida for some days with the Cup, which we'll get to in a moment, it was a celebration for more than just that, as we got to see the Latam Cup be held in South Florida from last Wednesday all the way to Sunday. The Caneswear had their autograph signings of Aaron Ekblad, Ryan Lomberg, and also Steve Goldstein being there too, and Vladimir Tarasenko for that event too. The infield had their own fan appreciation night too on Saturday, and it was just once again great to see that so much in the month of August. If I told you 30 years ago that there would be a whole weekend in August that will be a major impact in the growth of the game of hockey, I would have told you that you were crazy, and a lot of people would have probably said the same thing. And with that and the combination of the Florida Panthers winning the Stanley Cup, oh man, was this such a great weekend for the game of hockey that we all love here and that we want to see grow. But before we get to the Latam Cup, we said right at the top that the Stanley Cup is back. Right before it made its way back to South Florida, Sylvain Lefebvre got his day with the Cup, and we saw how he's quite a builder / handyman based on the equipment that he has out there in his hometown in Quebec. So great to see that he brought it to a place and also got to show off something that he's very passionate about for him. Once that was done, Ryan Lomberg also got his day with the Cup, where Phil Pritchard got a picture of him in front of a lake with the Cup and also sitting back and also with his back turned towards it right before lifting it up right in front of his pool too. The one this weekend that really stood out to a lot of people is Panthers' first-round draft pick in Dmitry Kulikov. Obviously, he's dealt with so many different stops after 2016 for the Panthers, and grateful to see that he came back, got to fulfill the mission of winning the Stanley Cup. And also for him, we spoke about how many times that he never wanted to leave in the first place and always kept his residence here in South Florida. And also there's the elephant in the room that's going on with the Cup not traveling to Russia and all the political issues that are going on there between Russia and Ukraine and everything else. So also great to see that Kulikov also got an opportunity to share, at least with the community, which he was able to surprise the Florida Junior Panthers there at War Memorial on Sunday. Brought it out, had a little bit of a red carpet. There was over 100 kids there, and also there's that picture of him and Peter Worrell at the end. And also, although Kulikov's facial hair has been shaved from the Cup run, he's letting that flow out a little bit. So great, cool to see that he's letting that flow for him, and a little bit of lettuce there for him. So great that Dmitry Kulikov also got his opportunity to share in a place that outside of Russia for him, that he got to call this place home, because this really, really, truly was a home as a young guy, and getting through his, not only his development in his game, but the development of who he is as a human being. and learning how to be a professional at this level too, on and off the ice too. Where now there's been a few pictures of where the cup has been recently, and the last photos that I saw at least, was yesterday, was recently from Deerfield Beach, excuse me, as the cup was at a restaurant, and also fans were taking pictures. I don't know the details of it yet, but the photos on the Florida Panthers fan Facebook groups have said that it's currently in Deerfield Beach. But also the night before, the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel, also known as the Guitar Hotel, posted a picture of the cup right in front of the Guitar Hotel. So another place that the cup has been to recently since being back in South Florida. I think this is the first time it's been back here since the parade, if I'm not mistaken, because it's been obviously in multiple different places too for their celebrations with the cup. But also to the Latam Cup, I want to congratulate U12 Team Venezuela, U14 Mexico, U16 in Colombia for winning their divisions too, but also for for Central America winning 5-1 in their game. And also a few players got to speak after winning, and one of them is a local guy, and Ricardo Adria, a Coral Springs native who played a few years ago in the Latin Cup, and also started watching the Panthers in 1993, and that's what helped them gain the interest in the sport. So the Panthers coming into existence, him starting hockey, and now seeing them win a cup, and also getting to win his own kind of championship in the Latin Cup. I mean, it must be really cool to see how he witnessed it firsthand on the growth of the sport too in it. And also in the women's division, the Caribbean team won 5-0 over Argentina, and the media was able to speak with goaltender Juliana Rogers, spoke about winning it with Puerto Rico a few years ago, but also now this time joining a Caribbean team with multiple countries together there. Also, low-key called out her defense, not having the best defensive zone coverage, but low-key saying that she carried the team. But even although she said that she didn't really do anything special too. So I was kind of found that response a little funny there too. But also the one that is really highlighted for a lot of people, especially knowing what the demographics of South Florida is. And it's crazy because a few days ago was the 32-year anniversary of Hurricane Andrew hitting South Florida. And also, as South Florida was rebuilding itself, also there was a lot of the population changing too, as many Cubans were starting to move to South Florida during that time with the Castro regime going on. And also with the Panthers and them coming to existence, just like we talked a little bit earlier in the segment with Ricardo Adria, but with Cuba winning it, and along with the Panthers winning it, and also with when the Panthers won the Stanley Cup. I remember when Francisco Porta, Florida Panthers historian, joined the show, he said that the people of where he lived at in Hialeah were telling him felicidades, congratulations on the Panthers winning the cup, and also never thinking that people would have the interest in a place like Hialeah. I remember Steve Goldstein, even during the parade, saying, "Where are my people from there?" So it's pretty awesome to see how that all came about. And also with the semifinal game of Lucas Prestamo, former Syracuse captain, called game in double overtime of their semifinal game. So great moment for him. And the Nicholas Amaya getting the game-winning goal with 3:56 left in the third, and the goaltender Tyler Terranova, the goaltender there, making 33 saves, named MVP of the game. And also he is a product of the University of Alabama too, there too. So, and also their head coach, Early Barrington, he's actually part of the Panthers Warriors too. So if you see him out there when the Panthers Warriors have their fair share of events, and you see number 89 on the ice, make sure to go congratulate him, as it was a lot to get the team together, as there were social media posts, messaging here and there, to get these guys on the team too. So there's a lot of hard work that comes into just building the team, with just overall promotion of trying to get people together who just love the sport and want to have some type of competition too for themselves, and also along with growing the sport. So it was just an overall great weekend for momentum in growing the sport of hockey in South Florida. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss more about Spencer Knight making a public appearance and discussing his experience in the Panthers winning the Stanley Cup. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And you heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insights on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the NHL is doing what is called their goalie week. It's called hashtag NHL Goalie Week. It's basically another way of saying Goalie Appreciation Week. Well, with goaltenders being the most important position in the game, I feel like we don't give them enough love that for them. But with over the weekend, Spencer Knight did appear on a local podcast from his hometown of Darien, Connecticut. And it was a podcast called Now We're Talking Darien. So the host of the show admittedly said that this is the first athlete that they've ever had on the show. So also with Darien being mostly on the western side of the state, not really in a big city. So for them getting a big star like Spencer Knight is really cool for them to get. Spencer spoke about his Cup Day, which is going to come on September 8th. And also spoke about how starting hockey at the age of 2 and then going to boarding school to get an opportunity to play with the older guys right before he left for the USA National Team Development Program in his junior year of high school. And also spoke about how those experiences and becoming a goalie are just help build you up. And also spoke about learning to move on from after giving up a bad goal, and also learn from the best, Sergei Bobrovsky from that, and how we also talk a little bit about Bob and just how you never know what he's actually feeling on the ice too. And also later on in that podcast too, which also really spoke about just the overall character of Sergei Bobrovsky, who he is as a person. Bobrovsky consistently gives himself an opportunity to ask a question to the youngster on what they're seeing, and giving also Spencer room to ask him questions too. And usually psychologically with a goaltender, that could be tricky when you're seeing the team succeed, but then you want to be the guy between the pipes too. And that internal competition, obviously we know that it's going to be Bobrovsky's net going into opening night of this year. And it's going to be like that for at least a good portion of the season. I still believe that we still need to see a little bit of Spencer Knight at least this year to see what they have when both of their contracts expire. But that's besides the point too. But it's just the constant professionalism that goes with those two guys on how they're looking to build each other up consistently too. And I think that's really powerful when it comes to just overall teamwork, when it comes to just one goal of winning the cup too. and also spoke about how he really is a guy who doesn't really look at his stats. They even pointed out how 4-0-0 to start his career, and even got into the last 2 playoff games for the Panthers. And even Spencer Knight was really mature enough to give the answers of that's a small sample size. That's nothing for what I'm going to do in the future. And very, very mature answer. And also spoke about how not settling when getting drafted too, and knowing how valuable the college experience is, and not necessarily wanting to leave after his sophomore season, but he knew the writing was on the wall for him to leave too. And also spoke about in that same interview about how he looks at guys who probably went to junior hockey and maybe got when obviously for Spencer Knight, he's in the books too. And also, speaking of being in the books, he also graduated on time, even with leaving Boston College after his sophomore year. He got a bachelor's in corporate systems, but going back to college and going to comparing that to junior hockey, he said he wanted that experience all along. And also spoke about how his parents were able to go see him play more often because of being so close by in BC too. And also is very mature about when he gets reps at the AHL level. And he spoke how he doesn't see it as a demotion being sent down. So we know that if opening night comes around and training camp has passed and they choose to do Bobrovsky and Chris Drieger, that we know that he has a good head on his shoulders when it comes to possibly going to Charlotte again for him. And he knows that the biggest thing a goaltender needs is reps. And it can be hard. They more times than not, when a goalie is drafted in the first round, especially, especially after the first round, that they're not going to the show right away. But even for Spencer being 13th overall, for him, there's still that time that you need at the development, and that it's not once again that it's not always linear too for him and for anyone. So there's going to be ups, there's going to be down, and the fact that he came back after coming back from the Players Assistance Program got to put more of his ducks in a row with speaking about his OCD and his experiences with it. He didn't go into too much detail, but the fact that he was still able to work through that too and still come out with a pretty good season too. I mean, the sky's the limit for this kid too. And also, I know this was a lot of the conversation between the fan base too. And this was something that I thought about personally too, is would Spencer Knight have done this if gone to the Players Assistant Program had he not had a contract on that was guaranteed and that he already signed? And also and he openly admitted that there was still that opportunity to go back, that he needed. There were so many things going on in his mind, going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, that time away and the fact that he knows that he could come back because of the contract that he's under, he'll still have an opportunity to play hockey too. And also, when it comes to being on the team, he knows that there's no certainty too whether you're out on the team. He's going to play for someone, but he knows that he's even spoke about how he wants to be in Florida the rest of the career, but knowing that there's still work to do in order to earn what could possibly be next for him. And also spoke about how him being from the small town, if you're good, you're going to be found. And we even spoke about it at the top of the segment, Darien, Connecticut being a smaller town compared to the rest too. And also spoke about his interest in stocks, getting into real estate too. And so he's creating also some of his off ice interests too. So that's also really cool to see that he is expanding his knowledge just beyond the ice. And also goalies they're nerds in their own way too. So with them being locked, focused, having to forget about goals after the fact, it's pretty cool to see what other interests that some of them do have off the ice, because for me, I love talking to goalies. They're just really, really interesting people. And also, one last thing before we transition to segment number 3 is that he spoke about winning the cup with the Panthers. Although he wasn't with the team throughout the year, being able to hand it to Paul Maurice was a really cool moment for him. But knowing that he didn't necessarily wasn't on the ice with the team, that it's still an opportunity for him to work harder, and also motivation for him to do it. And he said he only touched it twice. So he understands. The guy does understand about what he needs to do, and that if he is part of a future Panthers team that wins the cup and he's the starter, obviously it'll be more satisfying for him for putting in that work to be part of the continued success for this franchise too. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss more about what is coming for the Panthers as video surfaced on the Panthers putting on the sheet of ice. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Third and final segment here on this Monday, August 26th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. And the Florida Panthers X account tweeted that they have the video of them starting to put the sheet of ice at Amerant Bank Arena. And the advertising for the Stanley Cup final is still up there from what we saw in the video, but we still don't have we still don't know the look of what center ice is going to look like. We spoke excuse me. So we saw last year how when the Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup in 2023, their center ice you saw at the ends of the Stanley Cup too, in the middle of their logo, and a lot of color around it too. So with a whole bunch of color around the logo of the Golden Knights, other teams have started to make theirs stand out a little more. The Ottawa Senators have started doing it. They're going to start doing it this year, and also the Vancouver Canucks. It's not just the logo and just a whole bunch of white around it too for them. There's a little bit more color into them. But with the Panthers and them winning the Stanley Cup, I just want to ask you guys, what would you like center ice to look in a way to commemorate the Stanley Cup? I'm going to give my answer on what I would like to see for the Florida Panthers just to celebrate their victory. And what I would like to see is something similar to what we saw in the Stanley Cup bubble, where you saw the year at the time. At the time was 2020, obviously, but it didn't have the whole Stanley Cup. It only had half the cup at center ice for them. But paint it to the point where you have the top of the cup on one end and the very base of it too. And on one end, one half of the ice is the shield, the current shield of the Panthers. And then the other side being the Leaping Panther. Obviously, with this ownership group, if they decide to go that route, they're going to do the modern version of the Leaping Panther. They're not going to, unfortunately, they're not going to do the original Leaping Panther, especially not the one with the broken hockey sticks too. Anything with Wayne Huizenga, with the current ownerships of the other two South Florida sports in the Dolphins and the Marlins that Huizenga owned, those ownership groups are not going back to Huizenga's logos that he had for the teams that he owned. But if you were to find a way to honor thy history, because think about it like this: as a franchise, as a region, just like how we spoke about in segment 1 about the LATAM Cup and the Cup being here, this is a turning of the page for the Panthers. So why not put a little bit of a stamp for this season when you're celebrating the Cup victory? You have your current shield, which in every year that the current logo has seen, we've seen it. Why not put that with the other half being the Leaping Panther, and then as you go towards the middle, you have the Stanley Cup around it, and it fades into it. It's just like if you're getting a haircut and you get a 2 at the top, and then you start getting like towards a 0, and you have a high fade, something like that. But in relating that to the Panthers logo at center ice, and I think that would just be incredible for a look for the Panthers. We have seen a little bit of a glimpse of center ice at War Memorial for what the little markings of the Stanley Cup there. I don't know how. I assume that's going to be an idea for them. Also, Florida Panthers historian Francisco Porta also posted his own ideas too, and putting the actual cat prints too at center ice too, at the red line for his idea too. So there's a whole various amounts of ideas that could be placed for that. And for the Panthers, it would be hilarious if they went back to what center ice looked like in the Miami Arena days, where it was half a smaller logo on one side facing one side of the crowd, and then another and facing the other side too. But for that would be a little bit of a strange look if you also for me, it's another way of honoring the history too, if you want to put it on both sides. I mean, we've also seen teams like the Montreal Canadiens put the C on one side and the other too. So it's not like it hasn't happened before in the history of the game. So if you also want to honor thy past too, that would also be an idea for the Panthers if they just want to make the Stanley Cup actually stick out too. But a little bit of both, as the Panthers have really turned the page, especially with their reputation too, because nobody is talking about relocation with this team anymore. People are talking about how can we make it grow more too. And these are just the little steps of, even when someone's just flipping channels, and with the Panthers more gonna, when they're with them having more nationally televised games, being champions, if people are just randomly flipping through channels and they're not even a hockey fan and they see center ice and it's Amerant Bank Arena, they'll be like, oh, right away, those are the champions, and fans will be able to recognize that. And who knows, maybe it'll have them stick around and keep and not touch that dial too. So I think it's really, truly important to hit it out of the park for center ice this year in their attempt to commemorate the Stanley Cup. And I'm very, very interested to see how that would look, and we will be here to talk more about that when we know what center ice looks like for the Panthers. So tell me what you would like the center ice to look like as we are getting one step closer to the opening night, as we are 43 days away from the time of this recording. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. Make sure to come back tomorrow, as we are going to be doing a crossover edition of the show with the hosts of Locked On Red Wings, where we're going to discuss more about the offseason that was for both franchises. And is it playoffs or bust for Detroit? Come back on Tuesday, as we're going to discuss that and more. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.